Left side, Josh, just in front of those fire trucks. There's a house inside there. If I can just soak the area around that house, means that we don't have full trucks there.
Everything destroyed, absolutely devastating. Kitchen, what's left of the kitchen.
Today we are in the Western Cape looking at two very different weather extremes.
First, the intense fire season.
And a few months later, the severe flooding.
Two extremes, but both shaped by weather.
So we're hitting the road with our Spark Crosstrek to talk to some of the people who experienced these extremes firsthand. And we start with the fire season.
Hot, dry and windy conditions can very quickly turn a small fire into a dangerous situation.
And to understand what that looks like from the air, we're here at Leading Edge Aviation to talk to the fire pilots. Hi Mark, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Annette. My name is Mark Jackson, and I'm one of a team of people that work with Leading Edge Aviation, a company that my wife and I run, and we basically do firefighting more than anything else. Some wildlife work, we've lifted a few rhinos, but predominantly we had to put out fires.
So Mark, when you think back to this past fire season in the Western Cape, what is one thing that comes to your mind?
I think the busyness of the season. We, for the first time in the 21 years I've been doing this, we actually came here early because we had the Gans Bay fires burning and no one there to help them. So working with our quick reaction force, we got permission to leave the Lowvelds, flew down here and basically put the fire out the first day we got there with very good ground teams, and the season never really slowed up from there.
So you've basically answered this, but how does this compare to previous seasons you've worked in? Was it more intense and more unpredictable, more exhausting?
Seasons come and go, but this was certainly a very, very busy season, and I think in part because we had very strong winds and warm winds, and what we call a berg wind in the Lowveld would be a westerly wind. Here your berg winds are actually the northerly winds bringing hot, dry air, and we're talking at an average of between 40 and 50 kilometers an hour. So even the slightest bit of rockfall or whatever would lead to a runaway fire in short order. So a busy time, and I think the winds that we had were the strongest in more than 30 years of a consistent wind, where I woke Stevie up one morning. It was about 4:30 in the morning. There's a fire near the De Toerskloof tunnel. And I said, my son, they need the Hawk. Nothing else can fly there. And he said, Dad, the season is just unrelenting. Okay, we'll get up and go. And that, when I think of the season, I think of my youngster. At 4:30 in the morning, the wind's been blowing all night. It's still blowing. Nothing else can fly. That kind of summed up what we've been through. In fact, I can tell you now, sitting here, we've done, between the Hawk and the 3 Hueys, we've done 478 hours of firefighting, and 8.2 million litres of water have been dropped, so it's been busy.
What is one moment that stayed with you personally, and why would you say that?
When you leave home like we do, you're a long way from the Lowveld. You want to know that it was worth it and the effort was worth it. And one of the fires we had in the Wolseley area was spreading incredibly fast. It started next to a main road between Wolseley and Tilbach, burning towards some holiday homes that were made out of wood in a flay area. And I had to circle over and signal to the people that the fire's coming, watching the people pack. It actually gave me goosebumps. The dam wasn't far between myself and my friend Zane. We managed to put a line between the houses and the people that were now leaving. and not one of those cottages burnt. We then moved further along, but when we returned that to refuel to come home, not one of those houses were damaged, and the people were like waving, they were putting their stuff back into the cottages, and it was one of those feel-good moments, definitely.
We move from one extreme to another,
From dry lands and strong winds.
to saturated grounds and rising rivers.
We're here at Morningstar Airfield to meet up with John to show us what he saw from his recent flight over the flooded areas.
Morning, John.
Morning.
Would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Sean. I'm a marine conservation photographer. I'm a pilot, diver and cameraman.
We recently had flooding, and your footage helped many people see how serious the flooding was. So can you take us back to your recent flight over the flooded regions? What stood out to you?
Well, the day before I flew was the main day of flooding, and I had a friend who's an airline pilot who was flying up and down and monitoring the flood levels. And I couldn't get there. The weather was too bad for me to get across the mountain. So then the following day when I flew, the flood level had already dropped a little bit. But in a way it was almost better to see the damage, because a lot of buildings that were underwater, now the water had receded and you could see the damage to the buildings. And it was shocking. There were farm fields completely flooded, all the shade cloth taken away, all the netting, all the poles, and completely destroyed, sorry about that. And completely destroyed buildings as well.
How would you say this flood compared to previous floods or major Cape storms that you have seen, including like the Cape storm of 2021?
Well, I can answer that question quite knowledgeably. I've done a bit of research on the flood levels, and this was the worst in terms of the height that the river rose and the volume of water that came down the river. This was the worst flood since 1925.
We just came out of a very hectic fire season. So apart from the massive masses of water, would you say the fire season contributed to the flooding?
It's almost like we're living in biblical times of fires and floods. But what happens with the fires is very often they burn through the vegetation that holds the soil in place. And when you get a heavy rainfall after a fire, or shortly after a fire, then you get massive erosion and soil erosion. So I'm not sure that the fire contributed to the volume of water coming down the mountain, but it certainly contributed to damage where vegetation got washed away and erosion. And in Ceres, in the Mitchell's Pass, the road was extensively damaged. And I think that's the vegetation that burnt on the mountain obviously let go. The soil let go and came down across the road and the railway track. So in that case, the fire will certainly play a role.
Yeah. We cannot blame one storm or one fire season directly on climate change, but we are seeing a more variable climate and more concern around extreme weather. So from your perspective, do events like this show why adaptation and better preparation are becoming so important?
Absolutely. It's flooding. If you look at the flood data for the Breda, there were lots of floods in the early years between 1900 and 1920, and then for years they've been just the odd flood. And suddenly we've had 2008, we've had 2023, 2024, and now 2026. So they seem to be becoming more common. And the fires are definitely way more prevalent than they used to be. So both in terms of preparation, we need to be better prepared. gedaan, hoe was dit?
My joy saw from all the smiling.
From the air, the flooding looked overwhelming, but on the ground, rescue teams were racing.
So we quickly stopped at the NSRI headquarters to hear how the recent rescue operations unfolded. Donnie, sal jy net jouself voorstel and what do you do?
My name is Donnie Verwey, and I'm one of the four regional operations managers for the National Sea Rescue Institute.
So Donnie, we recently saw significant flooding across the Western Cape with heavy rainfall leading to the flooding roads, rising rivers and severe damage on the ground. Paint us a picture of how the rescue operations unfolded during the floods.
Again, quite a gnarly, for lack of a better word, experience. Again, it was not only us from the Volunteer Support Centre that was involved with the flood rescues. By the time we were activated, we already had multiple stations that responded to different scenes and call-outs throughout the day, being the previous day and I think it was last week Tuesday, the 12th of May. I think one of the main ones that everyone's kind of seen, which is the videos that have been posted on social media, was from Station 42 Kleinmond. That responded to Worcester and the Rawsonville area, so where they had to put a boat on the water to get to the casualties. And it was actually a lot more. They had to really improvise. They couldn't just use the boat or the jet trip to get to the casualties. They also had to use literally any other thing that they could find. They had to use ladders, debris that's floating down the water, anything that they could find to get to the casualties on top of the roofs. There's so much stories that the crews have shared with us and the different experiences that they've had. One of them being where they had to access a house, but they couldn't get into the house because there's a snake that took refuge on the door handle. So they physically couldn't get into the house to go and scope out the rest of the house and see if there's anyone trapped inside. Another story included where, as they climbed onto the roof and they knew there was people inside, they couldn't get access to the house from the sides through the doors or the windows. So they actually had to take the roof sheeting off to try and get into the house from the top. So it's quite a few hectic stories out there.
What is the main safety lesson the public can take from this flood event?
I think it's difficult from a humane point of view. If you are asked by local authorities to evacuate your home, your house, your pets, everyone, everything that you love, all your personal belongings, it's not as simple as just packing up and going. But I do think that if you are asked to evacuate the area that you reside in and you have the opportunity to do so, then that would be your best bet. The real thing to take into mind then, or to take home, is if the water does start coming down and you are now in a situation that you don't want to be in, at least try and get, if you can't get to higher ground, at least try and get out of the affected area. One other pointer has also been, if you do evacuate the area, try and not stay by yourself, but rather stick in a group. It's a lot easier for us to find a group of people than an individual.
In these fields of gold, I'll be running free. Each step running home to me. In these fields of gold, I'll be running free.
From fire to flood, this episode shows how quickly weather risks can change.
And how deeply they can impact lives, landscapes and communities.
That's why we don't stop at the forecast.
We go beyond the forecast.
Use your mind. Walk the line between what it is you know and the other side. Keep your eyes on the whole horizon. You might just end up a bit surprised.
That's why we're here, to see blah, 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 blah. From dry lands and strong winds.
Sorry. Wag, die ou gaan nou. Nee toe maar. Hy gaan nie nou ry nie. From the air, the flooded. 1, 2, 3. From the air.
We quickly stopped at the NSRI rescue. Yeah, okay, that's mine. We stopped at the NSRI headquarters to hear how the latest rescue operations unfolded.